She showed up to my daughter's birthday dinner wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. And I remember thinking, this woman has never done anything halfway in her life. My daughter, Claire, my youngest, the one who still calls me every Sunday morning even though she's 34 years old, had been dating this man for 8 months. 8 months. And already he'd moved into her apartment. Already he'd quit his consulting job to pursue what he called a passion project. And already my daughter was picking up every dinner tab, every vacation, every grocery run like it was the most natural thing in the world. His name was Fletcher Moss. And I want to be clear about something. I didn't dislike Fletcher because he was unemployed. I've been broke. I know what that looks like, and it doesn't look like Rolex watches and weekend trips to Scottsdale. I disliked Fletcher because every time I shook his hand, he looked just slightly past me, like I was a checkpoint on the way to something better. But Claire loved him. Or she thought she did. And at 63 years old, I've learned that there's a difference between protecting your child and controlling them, and that line is thinner than people think. So I kept my mouth shut. I smiled at dinners. I asked him polite questions about his passion project, which changed descriptions every time I asked. First it was a podcast, then a real estate fund, then something involving cryptocurrency that he explained for 15 minutes without once making sense. I smiled and listened and kept my opinions where opinions belong, behind my teeth. That birthday dinner was at a steakhouse in Denver. My wife had passed 4 years prior, so it was just the three of us, me, Claire, and Fletcher, plus Claire's friend, Margot from work, who I liked immediately because she was the only person at the table who ordered without looking at the prices. Comfortable people do that. People performing comfort look at the prices and then order something expensive anyway. Fletcher ordered the bone-in ribeye and a bottle of Cabernet without asking anyone else if they wanted wine. And then he launched into a story about a friend of his who just sold a startup for $30 million, and I watched my daughter's eyes go soft with admiration. And I thought, she believes every word of this. She genuinely believes every word. Margot caught my eye across the table. Just for a second. She looked away fast, but I saw it. That small, tired recognition between two people who are both pretending not to notice the same thing. After dinner, in the parking lot, while Claire was inside saying goodbye to the hostess she knew from college, Fletcher stopped me. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said. He put his hands in his pockets, rocked back on his heels, relaxed, practiced. "I'm going to propose to Claire next month. I wanted you to know." I said I appreciated him telling me. There's something else. He pulled out his phone, turned it toward me. A spreadsheet. And I don't mean a casual list. I mean a formatted, color-coded, multi-tab spreadsheet. I've been putting together a financial plan for our future together, and I wanted to share it with you man to man. I looked at the spreadsheet. I am a retired civil engineer. I have looked at more spreadsheets than most people have looked at anything. And I want to tell you, this one was meticulous. The man had put real time into this. The proposal trip to Paris, $14,000. The engagement party, $22,000. The wedding, $340,000. The honeymoon to Bali, $28,000. The honeymoon to Bali, $28,000. A down payment on a home in Cherry Hills, $180,000. At the bottom, a total. And next to the total, in the cell highlighted in green, contribution from Claire's family, $600,000. I looked at that number for a long time. Then I looked at Fletcher. "Claire doesn't know about this," he said. "I figured it would be better coming from me, father to father, more respectful." I said, "Is your father contributing as well?" He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "My family's situation is a little complicated right now." "I see." I handed him back his phone. "Let me think about it." Claire came out of the restaurant then, looping her arm through his, and he transformed instantly, warm, attentive, kissing the top of her head. And I drove home alone, thinking about that spreadsheet, about those tabs, about the green cell, about the word respectful. I did not sleep well that night. Here's what I know about my daughter. She is generous to a fault, which she got from her mother. She is also Underneath all that generosity, sharper than people give her credit for. She graduated top of her class from Colorado State, spent 5 years in financial auditing before she moved into project management, and she has an instinct for numbers that she mostly hides because she learned early that men in her industry were more comfortable when she didn't show it. I know my daughter, which is why, 2 days after the birthday dinner, when she called me on a Tuesday afternoon and said she needed to talk, I listened to her voice very carefully. She sounded tired in a specific way, not sleepy, worn. "Can I come over?" she asked. She sat at my kitchen table and wrapped both hands around a coffee mug and didn't say anything for almost 2 minutes. I let the silence sit. I've been a father long enough to know when to wait. "Did Fletcher talk to you?" she finally asked. "At dinner," I said. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "He told me he did. He said you had a good conversation. We spoke briefly." She looked up at me then. "What did he say?" I told her about the spreadsheet. All of it. The Paris trip, the engagement party, the wedding, the honeymoon, the down payment, the green cell. I watched her face while I talked, and I want to tell you, she wasn't surprised. Not really. There was a flicker of something, embarrassment maybe, or the particular exhaustion of having the thing you'd been trying not to see finally appear in full daylight. But she wasn't surprised. "He showed you the spreadsheet," she said. "He did." I didn't know about the spreadsheet. She set down her coffee. "I knew he wanted to talk to you about contributing to our future. He said it was traditional. Where did he get that idea?" "I don't know." She was quiet again. Then, "Dad, I need to tell you something." I waited. I lent him money. She said it quickly, the way you rip off a bandage. Over the last 6 months, different things came up. His car needed work. Then there was an investment that his friend needed him to move on fast. Then his health insurance lapsed, and he had some bills. She paused. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that once the consulting picked up. "How much?" I asked. She told me. $47,000. I kept my face very still. I am good at keeping my face still. I learned it the way most fathers learn it, from years of being the person in the room who has to stay calm so everyone else can fall apart. "Does he know that you know about the spreadsheet now?" I asked. "No," she said. "He thinks I'm at yoga." I nodded. "Okay. Dad, let me ask you something," I said. "When the car broke down, did you see the repair bill?" She looked at her hands. "He handled it. The investment. The dough. The investment. His friend's business. Did you meet the friend?" Longer pause this time. "He said it was time sensitive. There wasn't really time to." "The medical bills," I said. "Did you see the itemized statements?" She didn't answer. I got up and refilled her coffee. I refilled mine. I sat back down. Outside the window, a neighbor's dog was barking at something in the alley, and then it stopped, and it was quiet. "I'm not angry with you," I said. "I want you to hear that first. I'm not angry, and I'm not going to say I told you so, because I didn't tell you so. Because I didn't tell you so, I kept my mouth shut. I know. I kept my mouth shut because I thought it was the right thing to do. You're 34 years old. You're not a child." "I know, Dad, but now you're sitting at my kitchen table telling me he took $47,000 from you, and I'm going to ask you once, and I need you to answer me honestly. Do you want out?" She looked at me for a long time, and then she started to cry, not dramatically. My daughter doesn't do anything dramatically. Just quietly, with her jaw tight, the way her mother used to cry when she was angry at herself. "I feel so stupid," she said. "You're not stupid. You're kind. Those two things get mistaken for each other sometimes. I'm a retired civil engineer. I spent 40 years managing projects, which means I spent 40 years managing problems, which means I spent 40 years learning that there is no problem so large that it cannot be broken down into smaller, more manageable pieces. You do not panic. You assess. You make a plan. You execute." The next morning, I called a friend of mine named Arthur. Not Fletcher's friend Arthur, my Arthur, a man I've known since 1987, who runs a private investigation firm out of Colorado Springs. I told him what I knew. I gave him Fletcher's full name, his supposed consulting history, the name of the investment he'd mentioned most recently. Arthur called me back in 4 days. Here's what he found. Fletcher Moss had no registered consulting business. He had no active professional licenses of any kind. The investment fund he directed Claire's money toward was tied to an LLC registered in Nevada with no real assets, controlled by a man named Dale, who had 2 prior civil judgments against him in Texas for investment fraud. Fletcher's real estate project, the Passion Project, involved a parcel of land outside of Pueblo that he did not own and had not contracted to purchase, but had already mentioned to 3 different potential investors, collecting what appeared to be good faith deposits. He had done this before, not with the name Fletcher Moss, that one Arthur was still working on, but the pattern was there. A different city, a different woman, the same spreadsheet logic. Find someone generous, make yourself indispensable, move slowly enough that each individual ask seems reasonable while the total climbs into ranges that would have been unthinkable on day one. I sat with this information for a day. I thought about my daughter who was still going home to the apartment they shared, still making dinners, still being kind to a man who had built an entire architecture of lies around her generosity. Then I made 2 calls. The first was to a family attorney I trust in, a woman I'll call Eleanor, which is not her name, but suits her, who helped me understand exactly what we were dealing with and what options existed. The second call was to my daughter. I need you to come over, I said. Bring nothing, just come. She came. I told her everything Arthur had found. I showed her the documents. I watched her read them the same way I watch engineers read structural reports, methodically, thoroughly, without rushing past the parts that are hard to look at. When she finished, she set the papers down on my kitchen table. He was going to propose next month, she said. I know. Paris. He had me half excited about Paris. She laughed, short and humorless. I even looked up neighborhoods. I was looking up neighborhoods in Paris. Claire, she looked at me. You're going to be all right, I said. I need you to know that before anything else. She nodded. Her jaw was tight again. Eleanor helped us file a civil complaint, and separately, because of the multi-victim pattern Arthur had uncovered, a referral went to the Colorado Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, which had already been building a case through another channel we didn't know about. Our complaint wasn't the first. It turns out my daughter wasn't the only generous person Fletcher Moss had found in a Denver steakhouse. He was arrested 11 weeks later. Not in Denver, in Phoenix, which is where he'd gone after Claire changed the locks and stopped returning his calls. He had apparently started the same cycle again with someone else, had gotten as far as the emergency car repair stage, when he ran into a situation that had been coming for a long time. I got a call from Eleanor on a Wednesday morning while I was making breakfast. She told me they'd picked him up. I thanked her. I hung up the phone. I finished making my eggs. My daughter came to dinner that Sunday. She looked like herself again. That particular quality she has when she's not performing ease, when she's actually feeling it. She'd been in therapy since the spring, which was her decision, made calmly and practically, the way she makes most decisions. I talked to Margot, she said, passing me the bread basket. She said she knew something was off from the beginning. The birthday dinner. She did, I said. I could tell. Why didn't either of you say anything? I thought about how to answer that. Because you're your own person, I said. Because being right about someone doesn't give you the right to override someone else's experience of them. And because... I stopped. Because what? Because sometimes people need to arrive at the truth themselves. If I told you in October, you might have defended him. You might have been angry at me. And then you'd have stayed another 6 months trying to prove something. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you're probably right. I usually am, I said. Ask your mother. She smiled then, really smiled, and something that had been tight in my chest for most of a year finally let go. The $47,000, most of it came back, not all of it, not immediately, civil judgments being what they are. But Eleanor was thorough and patient, and the restitution order was clear. It takes time, but money is replaceable, and some things aren't, and the thing that mattered was that my daughter was sitting across the table from me eating pot roast on a Sunday night, and she was okay. I'm 63 years old. I buried my wife. I raised a daughter who turned out better than I could have designed. I have spent more hours staring at load calculations and tension diagrams than most people spend on anything. And what I've learned is that integrity in a structure is everything. It is invisible when it's working. You only notice it when it fails. Fletcher Moss was counting on that. He was counting on kindness being invisible right up until it ran out. He was wrong, and now he's someone else's problem to deal with. In a courtroom in Arizona, and my daughter is here, and the bread is warm, and that's the end of the story.